Burnout hits everyone. Based on the industries that I've had the fortune to work with, burnout doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're a teacher, doesn't care if you're an accountant, doesn't care if you're a lawyer or a doctor, doesn't matter. Burnout doesn't care. It's a situation where a huge problem continues to be a huge problem.
What habits are you seeing that's critical for success in different industries to combat burnout?
I think that one of the key ingredients is
Welcome back, everybody, to Scaling Up Success. I'm Ryan Van Ornum, your host, powered by Synergist. Today, I have on Michael Levitt of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Michael, how you doing today, sir?
I am well. How are you today?
Man, it's a great day, and I'm so excited to have you on our Scaling Up Success podcast today. First of all, tell us a little bit about Breakfast Leadership Network.
Organization I launched back in 2015 unofficially, 2016 officially. I started working with C-suite executives that were burning out, and I decided, because I had my own burnout journey, and excuse me, and I didn't want to see fellow executives go down the same path I did. So I started working on it, and then from there, launched a podcast, as we're on right now. Just celebrated the 8-year birthday of it yesterday. So forgot to order cake, though. I got to get a cake today and celebrate. 8 years is mind-boggling that I've done it for that long, especially when I didn't want to do it in the first place. So it was interesting that it's done that. And then, articles on burnout in business and workplace culture, and I do a lot of work with organizations on improving the retention, and it's been a wild ride.
Man, that is super cool though, that 8 years of doing all of that. That's fantastic stuff. So how has that evolved since you started this whole thing?
Well, along the way, I just kind of let it do what it's doing. I shouldn't say that I didn't have a plan. I did, but it was more or less loosely designed. I didn't want to go into say it's going to be this, this, and this. I wanted it to become what it was going to become. And that's, we're working with clients, the podcast show, the writing, and all of the fun stuff that I get to do. I just said, let's let this kind of grow to where it's going to grow. And obviously tweak things along the way, lots of lessons learned, lots of things. If I would do it over again, there'd be things that I wouldn't have done, or there'd be things that I would have done a whole lot sooner, quite frankly. But ultimately, it was just kind of taking advantage of the moment in time, looking for opportunities to serve, and just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I want to speak. So, did a ton of keynote speaking over the last few years. And the beautiful thing about that is get to meet all kinds of different people, talk in different industries. And when it comes to burnout doesn't care what industry or sector you're in. It doesn't. Burnout hits everyone. I mean, based on the industries that I've had the fortune to work with, burnout doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're a teacher, doesn't care if you're an accountant, doesn't care if you're a lawyer or a doctor or a grain elevator organization or a wastewater facility. Doesn't matter. Burnout doesn't care. So it's a situation where, it's a huge problem, continues to be a huge problem. And coupled with that is organizations and the culture and how things work in an organization, the workflow, the staffing, management skills, leadership skills. All these ingredients play into organizations that can be really healthy, or unfortunately, a lot of organizations that are struggling.
What habits are you seeing that's critical for like success in different industries to combat burnout?
I think that one of the key ingredients is just know your people. It doesn't matter if you're an organization of 5 or an organization of 50,000. You need to know your people. Now, does that mean the CEO knows all 50,000 people? No. But your managers and department leads and all that will know their teams. And you have to train them to understand, what's going on with individuals. Where's their sweet spot when it comes to being a productive and well-rounded employee. Create environments that will allow people to thrive. And a lot of people are kind of afraid that it's like, well, then we're going to have all these different versions of the company. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. Just understand within the framework of what you need to accomplish as a company, and design, and set up the guidepost along the way where people will have a bit of flexibility, let them know how they're doing, not at the annual review, but throughout, give them, obviously the coaching and guidance that they need to thrive. Make sure they have all the resources that they need to be successful. Because oftentimes organizations really struggle because they don't give their teams all the things they need to actually accomplish what they need to accomplish.
Hmm.
And when you have that, they get frustrated. They decide, this is pointless. They get disgruntled. That is contagious. And all of a sudden you have a team that's all just, they give up. And, I know Gartner just released a study not too long ago, pretty much indicated that two-thirds of employees are not engaged. That's a problem. And society is like, oh, that's not a big deal. No, it's a huge deal because what that means is all the products and services that you and I buy are in all likelihood either not the best quality or downright defective, which means you could possibly see all kinds of different issues. When we see all the recalls of food, okay, there's been cross contamination or mislabeled or, you know, anything under the sun. A lot of that is caused because people are making mistakes. And why are they making mistakes? Because they're frustrated, they're tired, they're burned out, they don't like where they're working. They're a little bit more careless than they normally would be because I don't care. This company doesn't care about me. Why should I care about them? And next thing you know, the products start getting faulty, and then you start seeing the recalls, and then you lose brand trust. And a stat that I love sharing, I actually don't love sharing this, but it's the actual truth, that of the Fortune 500 in the year 2000, 52% of them are gone. They were either acquired or they went out of business. So over half of the Fortune 500 companies from 25 years ago no longer exist.
Wow.
So, so when you have that stat, that indicates that the majority of businesses in the United States are small businesses or small mid-size. So imagine that, half of them are gone. I know that, and I see that a lot of times because I'll go through my bookmarks because I'm one of those people that just end up bookmarking everything, and then I'll go through a folder and I'm like, wow, I haven't looked at these bookmarks in a while, so I'll look at them and website's down or it's not existent or company's gone or like, geez, that's only been a couple of years. So it happens, and it was a company that I, had on my show a couple of years ago, actually. And, they were in a business. I'm not going to mention names or anything like that because I don't know the situation, why they went out of business. But long story short, they, provided certain types of benefits to companies and their employees and whatnot. And I had actually used one of their services, and I was like, "Oh, let's see what's going on with them." And then their website completely down, and looked, and like, wow, they are like gone, gone. Like, yikes! It's like
Wow.
that, and it happens. It's easy to do. All it takes is one economic downturn, or one loss of one key employee, or loss of one key customer. It's so volatile in many cases, and that's why when organizations are growing and they're scaling up, yeah, that riding that wave is fun. I've been part of many startups and love that growth period. It's exciting. But as you're growing along the way and you're building these steps, make sure you're building those steps with some security underneath them in case you need to take a couple steps back. Because if you don't, you take a couple steps back and those steps aren't stable. Next thing you know, you start falling further and further back, and then you're done. So it's as enticing as it is to enjoy, and you should enjoy the fruits of your labor and the success. You need to make sure that you have a strong foundation. You're allocating some resources to make sure that it's sustainable.
Absolutely. What advice do you give to companies in able to build that strong culture that a lot of times is the cohesiveness to help build brand longevity?
Yeah, you have to learn how to lead people. And that's something that unfortunately many organizations do not train on. You have to kind of lean on yourself. And I mentioned this earlier on a show today, actually. You have to, as a manager or as an executive or a leader, is you have to invest in yourself on how to lead people. And it's not necessarily you buy this book, How to Lead People, and you read all of it and you implement all of that. It's more complex than that, but it's also more easy. It can be as simple as, okay, what kind of leader do you like working for? As a leader or a manager, okay, who do you like working for? What's their dynamic? Why do you like working for them? What are some of the things that they do to help you be really good at what you do? Well, guess what? You do the same thing for the people that work for you. You be the leader that you like, and that comes through in how you lead. And then, of course, that will flow down to the people that report to you and work for you. Because if you're giving them an opportunity to grow and contribute and feel part of the organization, to be basically to feel like community is sometimes it gets overused, or they say we're like a family here. Well, a lot of people hate their family, so don't go down that road because you might isolate some people. It's like, no, I don't. If this is like my family, I'm going to quit right now. No, thank you. Not in my situation, but I know a lot of people they feel that way. So it's that sense of belonging. It's like, okay, I feel a part of this. I feel like that I belong here. And when you have an employee that does that, they will do all kinds of different things because they see the bigger picture and how their work and their contribution contributes to the overall success of the organization. If you can paint that picture as a company and have people recognize it and be a part of it and contribute to it to create that environment, you reduce the turnovers, you increase the retention, you have happier, healthier employees that produce more, and your customers benefit from it. It's a simple formula. It's fairly easy to implement, but unfortunately, it's also easy not to implement it. And unfortunately, we see in a lot of companies they don't even want to go down that path because they say this is how we've done it, and it's like, well, you can be one of those 52% if you keep doing things the way that you've always done it. Because if you don't adapt to what the demands are of society or your customer base, there's another company that'll open up tomorrow that it will steal your lunch money. It happens all the time. Doesn't matter how good you are. Yes, you have Uber, but guess what? There's Lyft now, and who knows? There may be another big service that pops up out of nowhere. The self-driving cars and taxis and things like that. Who knows? They may take from them because they'll be able to offer it at a lower rate because they're not paying an employee or a contractor to actually drive the vehicle. The vehicle will be driving the vehicle. So there's all kinds of things. Don't rest on your laurels, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Do you, one of the things that I've kind of taken for myself is I read from the book Tony Dungy wrote, the Indianapolis Colts, Tampa Bay Buccaneers former head football coach. He
Yeah.
talks about empowered mentorship
Hmm.
instead of training. Like you train people just to repeat a task, but empowered mentorship is that you're guiding them in a direction that they want to accelerate for themselves
Hmm.
more than they want to just implement a certain task. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I love Tony Dungy. I've been a huge fan of him for a very, very long time. One of the great coaches. He gets a lot of recognition. Probably needs more than he gets, just because of the human being that he is. He's a human being first, and I mean that's a good way to describe Tony is because he's such a caring individual. Doesn't mean that he's soft. He played football. You don't
Right.
you can't be if you're soft and you're playing football, you're going to get annihilated really quick. So you have to have tenacity in order to play that game at that level, which he did, and then of course coaching and winning a Super Bowl. Not easy to do. I mean, there's been 50 something of them. Not an easy task. But I agree with that. It's a mentorship or a coaching kind of thing and that's kind of the dynamic that I'm seeing in a lot of successful organizations now is instead of managing, they're kind of switching to more of a coaching playbook. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, here's the playbook, here's what we need you to do, or here's the job task, for example. Here's what you need to do. I'm going to guide you. So, okay, maybe next time try it this way. Okay, instead of this, maybe do this and this. What other resources do you need? Let's practice this. And so we're seeing that, and you see a lot of times too, you see organizations that are gamifying things at work for performance measures and things like that, trying different things. And some organizations it thrives. Some generations absolutely love it. Some generations probably are like, what are you doing? This is not how
Right.
we used to do things. And that's another dynamic that we're seeing. And we've got multiple generations in the workforce right now. We've got the baby boomers, we've got Gen X, we got millennials, we got Gen Z, Gen Alpha's showing up now. So you get all these generations that are in the workforce, and each one of them have different levers, more or less, that will kind of get them motivated. Now, I'm not going to paint a broad picture or a broad stroke basically to say, okay, this generation only does it this way. No, there's there are baby boomers that, behave and act like the youngest of workers and playful and creative and all that. And then there are some young workers that are stoic. Everything has to be black and white to this, to this, to this, and every degree in between. But I think ultimately it's understanding your teams, creating an environment for them to thrive in, no matter what their motivators are, but know what they are. Ask them, what motivates you? You know, what kind of discipline things work for you? And I'm not saying about you're going to discipline employees, it's like your self-discipline. Okay, what gets you out of work? What made you come to work today, even though you weren't feeling 100%? Why did you come into work? Why?
Right.
It's more than, well, I need the money. Okay, yeah, that is a motivating factor for sure. But if you didn't care for the company and you weren't feeling well, you're like, what, I don't feel well, I'm not going in, screw them. So, and hopefully you don't have employees like that. But that's again, it's just understanding your people and having that communication flow continue helps a long way in keeping your organization thriving and growing.
What one piece, like, if you can narrow it down to like a sentence or two,
hmm
what piece of wisdom would you embellish to others about how to avoid burnout in the workplace?
Sleep. Get lots of sleep, preferably not at work, but they allow it. I know, some Eastern European countries, they have built-in nap times at work. I wish the West would kind of grab onto that. It'd be surprised on the productivity you'd get out of it. But sleep is so important. It's when we repair the damage we do to ourselves on a daily basis. I
Hmm.
don't care. I don't care how healthy you are. You could eat nothing but kale salads and smoothies and have 0% body fat, lean, mean, exercise, all that good stuff. We still do damage to ourselves. The air we breathe, the information we consume, the fatigue and challenges of life, take a toll on us. So when we sleep, that's when our body's repairing all that damage. And if we don't get good sleep, then that damage doesn't get repaired. So then today's damage gets piled on to tomorrow's damage, and then the next day, and the next week, and the next month, next year. And prolonged stress is what turns into burnout. So if you have prolonged stress, not only are you flirting with burnout, but you're also damaging your body. And the majority of chronic diseases, stress is a component of them. It's like how you ended up with hypertension or diabetes or heart disease or cancer or anything else is because your body is so stressed. Your brain is going, well, I need to allocate resources from other areas to attack that stress. And that means the defense mechanism, quite frankly, of your body is is not up to speed. So that's why you can start running into problems and some health problems and mental problems and all of that. So it's the one secret sauce, if there is one, is if you can get good, restful sleep, then it helps you navigate through stressful situations easier and you can manage your stress. Because if you don't have prolonged stress, you won't burn out. It's not a zero to burnout thing. It has to be prolonged stress that turns into burnout. And figuring out why you're stressed, what's causing it, what are the ingredients, and sometimes you have to look within. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't like doing that.
No, the introspection is not a lot of the first thing that people do when looking at attacking stress or burnout of those situations. Man, that's a phenomenal answer on that. Thank you so much for, for that suggestion. Man, I could talk to you all day about this. This has really been a great informative conversation. One thing before we let you out though is how can people get a hold of you if they want your services? Share all your socials, whatever you want, man. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the best place to find me is just go to breakfastleadership.com. The socials are either at the, depending if you're looking on a phone or a website on a computer, socials either listed up to at the top or at the bottom or in the ellipsis button. You'll see links there. The podcast show is available on all the major platforms. Books are on Amazon, doing a lot of work with individuals and organizations on debt management because 70% of Americans are under an insurmountable amount of debt. And financial stress, in my personal opinion, is the worst stressor because as much as we hate to pay bills, we do enjoy the ability to be able to pay bills. And when you can't pay your bills, that has a domino effect on every aspect of your life at home, at work, everywhere. So, I recognize that through my own burnout journey. Financial stress was a real bugger for me. So now I'm, helping organizations kind of, look at some options to figure out, how they can, one, help their employees with their debt management in a confidential way. So it's not like your manager will know that you have, 8 credit cards that are maxed out. Your boss won't know, and no one else will either. But I hate seeing people, really drowning in financial debt because I know how stressful that feels. And so it's been kind of an avenue that I've been, working on a little bit in addition to all the other great things they get to do. But long story short, just go to breakfastleadership.com. You'll be able to find pretty much everything on me.
Man, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of our Scaling Up Success podcast today. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right.